Welcome to NATMUS, the National Automotive and Truck Museum of the United States, here in Auburn, Indiana. I'm Larry Dent. I'm the Executive Director of the museum. I'd like to welcome you and give you a few highlights of our Automotive and Truck Museum and Model Museum as well. I'm standing next to a 1954 Lincoln, one of three cars that we have on display that were original competitors in the very early Panamericana road race through Mexico. These started in the early 1950s and ran for a number of years until problems with accidents sidelined the series and put an end to it. They did some recreations some years ago, and the vehicle I'm standing next to went back in 1992 and actually won overall on the recreation of the Panamericana. Very historic, probably the only place in the world today where three original cars are actually on display for public view. I'm standing in front of a 1930 Fagel, F-A-G-E-O-L, Fagel. Very, very rare truck. They were only built for a few years. One of the more unusual vehicles that we have on display here at the museum. Here we have a 1932 Indiana. The Indiana truck line was made in Marion, Indiana for a number of years. And right next to it is a 1933 Indiana done in Pennzoil yellow colors. And in between, incidentally, one of our very beautiful, fully restored gasoline pumps, part of the Tokheim collection that is now on display here at the museum. Now, we all know that Rio Speedwagon is a vocal group, a rock group, but what you may or may not know is that the original Rio Speedwagon was a truck. Here is a 1919 fully restored Rio Speedwagon on display here at the museum. This is one of the monster machines that we have on display here at the National Automotive and Truck Museum. This is a 1927 Clower snowblower, and it's fully restored. It runs and has not a muffler on it, and when this thing runs, you can hear it 2 counties away. It's an enormous, enormous engine in this big old snowblower. This little snowblower in front of the big Clower is also built by Clower, and it's one of their little hand-operated snowblowers that we have just to show the comparison between the monster machine and what you would use for your home driveway. This was off the side of our World Speed Record truck showing the records that it established. But in 1993, it established a world speed record on the Bonneville Salt Flats of 226.471 miles per hour. This is called the Endeavour, and it's based on an International Harvester vehicle. And it is a monstrous machine. They blew a tire on this truck at 230 miles an hour, spun it around about 20 times. It did not go over, fortunately. And that was the last run. They were trying to establish another record, and instead it pretty well destroyed itself. They've restored it, and it's on display here at the museum.
Everybody roll. Diesel truck off the course.
Well, you're looking now at a 1937 International Wrecker, and it apparently had duty at some time hauling AAA people around because it has a Chicago AAA light, shall we say, on the roof, and it's in pretty nice shape for an old girl. A lot of people will tell you, oh, Buick never built a truck, but there's living proof right here. They only built trucks for 2 years. This may be one of maybe a half a dozen 1910 Buick trucks still in existence, very rare. One right next to it is a 1909 McIntyre, and that was built here in Auburn, Indiana. Well, this is a 1911 white Canopy Express. It's in original unrestored condition. There's a lot of debate these days about restoration versus preservation, and this is a preserved original 1911 white Canopy Express. Well, you're looking at pickup truck row right now, starting off with the 58 Studebaker, which is a fairly rare vehicle. Then we have a number of Chevrolet and GMC trucks, and at the end of the line is the 2 millionth pickup truck to roll off of the General Motors assembly line in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And that was presented several years ago here to the museum. It's brand new. This is a 1925 Mack Bulldog chain drive. Very unusual because chain drive stopped on vehicles just about that period of time, but Mack continued to build chain drive trucks for quite a bit after that. This is on loan from Mack in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Well, here's our 1926 Hendrickson, fully restored by Hendrickson Truck Corporation and on loan from them. It's in running condition. We don't get it out very often, but it's a beautiful, nicely restored 1926 Hendrickson. One of the interesting things about this 26 Hendrickson is that it's mainly made of wood. It has the complete wood cab, steel frame of course, and steel hood, but the bed is all wood, the cab is all wood. Well, this is a 1919 Ford depot hack, and in the back, a very unusual Calliope. It would have been a steam Calliope, it's an air-driven Calliope now, but an old Calliope in the back of the depot hack. 1911 Kirsch paddy wagon, fully restored, very, very rare. You won't see very many of these left anywhere in the world, and we have one on display here at the NATMUS Museum. Being a paddy wagon, we needed a lot of things to let people know we were coming, so on the other side of the bell, we have a little ooga horn. We're very, very proud, particularly, of this truck because it is quite possibly one of the world's finest restored fire trucks. It's a 1918 American Lafrance pumper. It was restored by Dr. Robert Fusion of Warsaw, Indiana, and donated a few years ago to the museum, and it is absolutely gorgeous. The gold work that is done in gold leaf, it's an art that just very hard to even have it done anymore, and it's everywhere on this fire truck. Well, we have a very interesting hot rod on display. This was commissioned by the Johnny Lightning people, and in 1992 it was declared the hot rod of the year and was on the cover of Hot Rod magazine. And one of the most unusual things about this, and a trendsetter that started a complete change in hot rod, was the hiding of all the wiring and all the plumbing. If you look under the engine compartment, you don't see any ignition wires, you don't see coil wires, you don't see plumbing for the fuel injection system. All of it was hidden, and this was the first time that this ever happened in a hot rod and started a definite nationwide trend. Very, very influential and historic vehicle. Well, we've shown you a lot of trucks, but we are the National Automotive and Truck Museum, and we have some very outstanding vehicles, cars on display as well. We like our muscle cars, and here's a typical example of some of the nice muscle cars that we have. This is a 1970 Plymouth Superbird, fully restored, absolutely in brand new condition. It has the 440 cubic inch wedge engine that develops around 390 horsepower, and it is a demon to drive, believe me. This is our 1971 Olds Cutlass Supreme convertible. Very, very nice restoration. It has the 350 Olds engine in it, and incidentally is one of the cars that we have here for sale. Some of our vehicles are put in by our members with for sale tags on it. I think this one is tagged at about $18,000, which is not bad. And we have a couple of very nice Hemis on display. We have a 66 Dodge Charger Fastback with a Hemi engine, and we also have this 1968 Plymouth Roadrunner with a Hemi. As you probably know, the Hemis now are very scarce, very expensive. Just a Hemi engine by itself sitting on the floor will bring $15,000 or more. So they're very desirable in collector cars now, especially muscle cars. It's about a 425 horsepower motor. This is a 1969 Ford Torino Talladega, and the designation Talladega makes it quite rare. Ford built a very limited number of these with a little better aerodynamics so that they could have better success on the high-speed speedways such as Daytona and Talladega. Very rare cars, a very nice original Talladega. Well, you're looking at a 1970 Plymouth Hemi Barracuda, and it's extremely rare. It's the only one in the world. It's the #1 car built. It was the first off the assembly line. Probably could call it a prototype, I suppose, but after it was built, a lot of minor trim changes and other changes were made to the full production run of the Hemi Cuda, but you're looking at the very, very first one. You're now looking at a 1963 Chrysler 300J. Only 400 of these Chrysler 300Js were produced, and the unusual thing about them were those huge cross-flow manifolds which were developed in order to be competitive in stock car racing. It gave the car an enormous amount of torque. Very, very unusual, very rare vehicle. Well, you're looking at a 1959 Chrysler Imperial Crown Series four-door sedan, and this was the height of gaudiness, I guess you would say, in the late 50s and early 60s. Chrysler and Cadillac, all with the big tail fins. Every accessory you could possibly put on a car, this car had. And it is absolutely gorgeous. It's low mileage, it's unrestored, was donated by Dean Cruz, incidentally, the very famous car auctioneer and very prominent museum owner here now in the Auburn area. And it is a beauty. It's my favorite car in the museum. I just love it. We're looking now at the business end of a 1964 Oldsmobile 442. V8 engine, 330 cubes, 310 horsepower, and back in 1964, believe it or not, it sold for just under $3,000. The oldest gas pump that we have on display from the Tokheim restored collection is this French gas pump. Dates back to the turn of the century, actually, where they would slip a 55-gallon barrel of gasoline into the carrier with the wheels and dip the pump tube down into it and then hand pump gasoline out of a 55-gallon barrel. Well, you're looking at a 1952 Kaiser Traveler, which was sort of the forerunner of the station wagon. The rear opens up like a hatchback, and the bottom of the rear of the car goes down like a pickup truck, and it becomes sort of an early station wagon. But this is extremely rare in that it's a two-door. And a lot of people come in and say, oh no, Kaiser never built a 1952 two-door Traveler. Well, here's one to prove they did. Well, we have a pair of somewhat unusually styled cars now. First of all, we have the Edsel. This is a 1959 Edsel Ranger four-door. Very, very nice, unrestored original condition. And most unusual with the treatment on the grill area. Never anything like it before or since, I guess I would say. And right next to it, we have a 1955 Gnash Statesman Super. And again, most unusual treatment with the curved grille, the sort of streamliner effect, if you will, of the fenders. A very distinctively styled car. They were very popular at the time. And again, this one is restored, very nicely done. Well, this is the rear, if you will, the fins on a 1955 Cadillac Coupe de Ville that we have on display. And it's sort of Fin City here, if you will, because right next door we have a 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham, and this car was almost garish. It has stainless steel, chrome, every option you could probably put on a car of this type. Very, very rare, very desirable, very collectible, pretty drivable actually. Well, we have two Corvairs side by side, and the unusual part of this particular 63 Corvair Spyder is the turbocharged motor. It's a 150 horsepower turbo unit and was very, very technically advanced when it was introduced as a production vehicle back in the 1963 era. One of the unusual things about the turbo on this vehicle is it did not have a wastegate. And so you could fool around with these just a little bit and get a lot more horsepower out of them than what the factory advertised. Very durable unit, a lot of them sold. They were very popular at the time, the Spyder. Well, you're looking at a very old 1911 International Harvester Model A auto wagon. It's what we call a high wheeler. To give you an example, I'll walk in here and show you. These wheels on the old high wheelers are, well, they're that high, probably 4 feet, I guess, and they're known as high wheelers. This particular one, fully restored by International Harvester on loan from them. It runs. In fact, we're going to have it out for a parade in just a couple of weeks. Well, one of the features of the museum is an annex featuring all International Harvester vehicles. And we start with the very, very early Weber wagon, which was built by a company that was a predecessor to International Harvester. And the Weber wagon dates back before the turn of the century. And then we have another Model A, not quite as nice as the one upstairs, another 1911 high wheeler. We have a 1914 auto wagon, and quite a few other. I guess we probably have 15 or 18 international vehicles on display in the International Annex area. And moving down the line, this is a 1915 International Model F truck. Beautiful red restoration done fairly recently for us by International. And next to it is a 1927 International Harvester Corporation Model 63C, brightly painted yellow. Both these vehicles are out recently for an IH company picnic and celebration, by the way. Well, we're looking at a 1929 International 6-speed special loaned to us by George Medford Produce Company. Very nice restored vehicle. Next to it in orange is a 1930 A5 International, and this is on loan from Ken Rabenek in Louisville, Kentucky, and again, a beautiful restoration. And next to that, my absolute favorite international vehicle here. This is a beautifully restored 1936 IH C1 pickup truck, and it is better than new without a doubt. Well, here's our Silver Fleet vehicle on display. It's a 1937 International DR60 Semi. The big blue truck is a 1962 International DCO 405 was what International called it, but it was nicknamed the Emeryville. This was donated to us by the Dana Corporation. Had a big plant here in Auburn for many, many years, and it hauled parts and supplies for Dana for a lot of years. Well, this is a truck that is an idea truck. It's a 1990 International, and it was a design exercise. The vehicle never made production, but a lot of the features on the truck actually went into later production years. The streamlining of the cab for aerodynamics in 1990 was not important at all. Today, it's vital on a truck. The step side, step up streamlining that covered up the fuel tanks, same thing. It's a very, very influential truck, even though this is the only one ever built. Here's a big old red dump truck. W. Daly has loaned this to us, or donated it, I guess. It's a 1947 International KB6, and believe me, it had a lot of service in the construction industry before it was restored and came here. And here's a 1949 International, it's KB10. I love this. This is a 1954 International R110 Travelall, and I used to own one of these back about this is a 54, I owned one about 1956, and we called it the Great White Whale, and it hauled anything you could throw into it. Very historic vehicle, unrestored, original. Here are two International Travelalls. The first is a 1966 1000A Travelall, very, very useful utility type vehicle, and right beside it is a 1973 International 1010 Custom Travelall. And as you can see, they changed a little bit. They got a little bit more design-wise, a little more modern, but basically underneath, they were just about the same vehicle, and they just went on and on and on. You just couldn't destroy one. Here's a 1973 1010 pickup. Yes, International made pickups as well as Travelalls. Just about the same vehicle, except instead of a full-bodied station wagon concept, they were a pickup truck. And again, a very durable, rugged vehicle. Right next to the IH pickup is another vehicle that never made production that we have on display. This was called the Advanta, and it was a design concept vehicle. And I just couldn't understand why IH didn't put this truck into production, because I think it would have sold tremendously well to race car teams and people like that needed a small, versatile vehicle to haul large trailers behind. It's a beautiful, beautiful truck. This is a 1980 brand new Scout with 300 miles on it. It hasn't even had the vinyl covering taken off of the seats from the factory. The story that goes with this is that a mailman in the Dayton area heard they were discontinuing the Scout, so he ordered two brand new ones, figuring that with his service in the mail delivery, he'd wear one out and have one left. Well, he never wore the first one out, so we wound up with the second one, which is brand new. We have a very unusual vehicle we're going to show you, but first the sketch of the original Scout. The sketch was done by Ted Arness, the creator of the Scout for International Harvester, And that was the basic concept of the vehicle. This vehicle is displayed in honor of Ted Arness, the IH chief designer from 1951 to 1980, and the originator of the Scout. It's a beautiful, fully restored, early Scout. Well, I'd like to say thanks very much for paying a visit here to the National Automotive and Truck Museum in Auburn, Indiana. Hope you've enjoyed your tour. We're open almost every day of the year from 9 to 5. We're open Sundays. We're closed Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and Easter. I think those are the only days we're actually closed. So we'd like to see you someday. Come and visit us. $6 to get through. It's the best $6 you'll ever spend. And until we do, see ya.